Hi everybody, so I got a fancy new Apple Watch and it has all kinds of health tracking features on it. It has heart rate tracking, HRV tracking, sleep tracking, steps tracking, and as a data guy who's also really into fitness and things like that, I've just been loving exploring this and taking the opportunity to see what kinds of data it can generate. Conveniently for me, the very first week that I was wearing this Apple Watch, which was the week of March 23rd or so, I had a number of things happen to me during that week, and those manifested inside my sleep patterns. So let's take a look at my sleep patterns together and see what happened. Okay, so here are the very first 2 days of my sleep tracking. You can see March 23rd and March 24th, which is very recent. These are days that were normal for me. And just to give a baseline of what my sleep is like. Now, actually, I haven't yet looked up what sleep is supposed to be. I'm gonna do that live here for you, so we'll find out together. It seems that for me, I sleep about 7 hours a night, which sounds pretty reasonable. I go from core sleep to deep and core to deep, here core, deep, and then up to REM. In either case, these beginning stages, the first couple hours, seem like they're overall pretty similar in the amount of quantity I get for each of, REM, core, deep, just some small differences. And then I wake up a little bit and I go back through the cycles and I wake up a couple times until I finally get out of bed. Here I wake up a couple times and then I go through core, deep. I mean, there are some differences between these two quote unquote normal graphs, but I think they look pretty similar. Now the next day, March 25th, I fasted. And so I think during the sleep, my fasting window went from like about 20-ish to 28-ish, let's say. So I was pretty deep into my fast. And you can see, compared to the day previously, where this is my baseline of sleep, you can see what happened to me is I woke up and quite a lot and had much more quick and frequent sleep cycling. The way I look at this data is I interpret as saying I look either very stressed out or I look like I'm sleeping quicker. There's a clear deviation between the normal state and the fasted state. Look at all these cycles. Wow, I really slept super fast. I got a lot of deep sleep, it seems like, and my core sleep, I got a lot as well. If anything, it looks to me like the one that was sacrificed the most could be REM. And a mixture of REM and deep sleep, I guess, but I cycled through them so fast. Very interesting. And ironically, I actually slept for a total more time than I did the previous 2 nights, which was considered normal for me, which is also something that's interesting. Okay, so here are all of my sleep patterns for the entire period that I'm recording for this video. A total of 9 days of tracking and 3 very specific conditions that I think are pretty interesting to look at. So again, we had those first 2 days, March 23rd and 24th, that were considered normal for me. Then I had the day that I was fasted. Then I had another normal day. But something interesting happened during this normal day. I don't normally drink like coffee or like any caffeine, but I will occasionally have like a small treat, like maybe a tea or a boba or a decaf coffee or something like that. For a variety of reasons, that day during lunch, I ended up having a matcha latte, and then that night I ended up having a boba as well. So for me, I was severely over-caffeinated, extremely over-caffeinated. Definitely not an ideal situation. And what happened was I did not sleep that well that night. You can see 4 hours and 42 minutes of sleep. Overall, very, very less sleep. The interesting thing that I'm looking at, and keep in mind, is that the plot range of this graph is a little wide compared to the other ones because it's trying to show them over like the same x-axis. But this over-caffeinated poor sleep pattern looks very similar to the fasted sleep pattern. The difference is that when I was over-caffeinated, I got into a deep sleep for quite a while, a little bit longer than I held a deep sleep during the fasted state. But other than that, I was doing something very similar where I was waking up and going back and waking up and going back very frequently. It's interesting. So is this evidence that shows that fasted sleep and over-caffeinated sleep are kind of the same thing? Maybe a little bit, Again, I only have my normal sleep as a baseline here. I don't know what a good sleeping pattern should quote unquote look like. I'm gonna look it up at the end of this video and we'll find out together and see what it looks like. So another interesting thing that I want to point out is what happened after that night of over-caffeinated. And then I had quote unquote normal sleep for several days in a row, 7 hours 30 minutes, 7 hours 9 minutes, 7 hours 22 minutes, 5 hours 37 minutes. That's still relatively normal for me. You can see while these patterns look mostly the same, there is one key difference, I think. It's that in the day after, so over-caffeinated sleep, then the day after that, I didn't have as much deep sleep as I normally do. In fact, the amount of deep sleep I got on the second day after almost matches the amount that I got while over-caffeinated, and it's definitely less than the amount of deep sleep that I've gotten throughout the other nights. At least it seems that way to me. Maybe the fasted arguably is just as minimal, but I go into it in and out of it very frequently. This one, I only went into it 3 times, 2 of them very, very brief, and then 1 of them for just a little bit. The reason I want to point that out is because I've always noticed this phenomenon, and I don't know if it's just me or if it's happened to other people too. If I have a night of very low sleep, I feel fine. I feel normal mostly that day, maybe a little bit tired. I mean, definitely the morning is great. By afternoon, I do want to nap, but I'm generally okay. But the very next day, the day after that, is when it hits me like a brick and I feel absolutely terrible. Like it's when I stay up all night, it's not the next night that hurts, it's the night after that. And I wonder if it's because I'm not getting enough deep sleep to make up for all the sleep that I lost. It's an interesting idea. I should look up some theories about that and see what happens. Okay, so now I'm going to go day by day and talk about not only my sleep data, but also my heart rate and my HRV. I'm also going to talk about my mood and energy throughout the day as I felt it and see if there's a correlation between all of these things happening together. So first day, normal. As you can see, this is my baseline. I woke up probably sometime around 6 a.m. So if we look around 6 a.m., it seems that my heart rate was in the range of about 50 beats per minute, maybe 48 to 49 beats per minute, up to 60 or so. So my resting heart rate is a low 50s, let's say. HRV is something, for those who don't know, I also don't know that well. HRV, it stands for heart rate variability. It has to do with the distance between, as I understand it, your heart is not just boom, 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 very, very steady going along. I think because there is a clash between the sympathetic nervous system and the parasympathetic nervous system, the more relaxed and recovered you are, the more one of those gives away, and then that allows actually for some variability within your heart. And so a higher HRV score means you are more rested, more recovered in general. I mean, if you also have a high score, it could be a sign of arrhythmia, but I think there are other signs of arrhythmia, so don't quote me on all that. I'm not an expert. That's just from what I remember looking it up one time. Generally, higher number, the better. I think most people range between, I don't really know what the baseline for that is. I think the baseline probably is around like 50 milliseconds or so from what I remember, so anything higher than that is probably good. Let me check. General range. A normal HRV range for adults can be from below 20 to over 70 milliseconds. Higher is generally better. A higher HRV is generally considered better, indicating a more resilient and adaptable autonomic nervous system. Elite HRV users average 59.3 on a 1 to 100 scale, with 75% of users' HRV scores falling between 46.3 and 72. So healthy individuals, 60 to 70 scores depending on age. Top endurance athletes, 90 to 100 or even higher. Less people, 40 to 55. Okay, so to be healthy, generally 60 to 70. If you want to be a top athlete, you want to be like 90 to 100. So that's going to be our reference for this video. Okay, and we're back to the data. So around the time I was waking up, that's somewhere around 7. This was around probably when I was exercising. So it makes sense that whenever you're exercising, your heart rate is going to be more steady compared to before. There's going to be less variability. Not only that, but you're also going to be less recovered because you literally just exercise. You're literally expending all that energy. And so as you're recovering over time, this thing should increase. So my around wake up time was around 70, looks like, milliseconds, with an average of 60 milliseconds for the day. So that's pretty decent. Right, so moving on, you can see that I also put mood and energy for this day and the previous day. I think 3 out of 5 is reasonable to say for most of my cases. I strongly believe in a Gaussian trend where most of the days should be 3 out of 5. That's your baseline. And if you have a particularly good day or particularly bad day, that's when I'll deviate from it. So again, we already spoke about the sleep of this one. When you look at about my heart rate when I woke up, again, low 50s, kind of high 60s. One of the first things that I do whenever I wake up in the morning is I do Wim Hof breathing, which is something that will probably get my heart rate going a little bit. And then after that, I either go for a walk or I do stairs or something like that, some kind of light endurance work or just a lot of movement. So I'm not surprised to see my heart rate getting jacked up so early in the morning. But it also depends on when you wake up. According to this thing, I woke up sometime around 5 to 6 a.m., which means around here, probably. So I think it's probably this one is when I was waking up. My heart rate's slowly trending down. So my resting heart rate, 49 to low 50s again. That seems to be my resting heart rate. And when you look at that period of time, it was actually over 100 milliseconds, which means that per Google's AI bot, I am an elite endurance athlete. Hell yeah, baby. That's what I like to see. It was a little bit lower, and then as I slept more and more deeply and got in, I guess technically not deep. That's when I got more core sleep, and then I recovered. So maybe core sleep's more important, and REM? Boom, it shot up, and then throughout the day declined, and then shot up above 100 again. Wow, I am killing it with HRV stuff. And then we go to the day of fasting. What happened when I was fasted? And so I actually felt pretty good. So remember, keep in mind, I broke my fast probably around lunchtime this day. So until, let's say 12 p.m., I was, 28 or so hours into my fast, 28 to 36 hours deep into my fast here. And so around the time when I woke up, a little after 5 a.m., so somewhere around here, I had an even lower heart rate, 48 BPM to lower 50s as well. And when you look at my HRV for that range, again, that's just around, okay, it looks like I didn't record an HRV for right when I woke up, but whenever the pre-wake up HRV was again around 100 milliseconds, which is pretty good. Elite endurance athlete, apparently. And then whenever you look at after I started doing my steps and workout, presumably that's when I'm hitting this low one. That's a little bit, it's hard to see. That's around 75 or so milliseconds, which is still decent. Got really high. At some point in the day, it was like 150. I don't know what happened. That was right after I broke my lunch. That was, yeah, I said that I broke my fast around lunchtime that day. So after I ate lunch, I super recovered, apparently, 150 milliseconds. Either that or I have arrhythmia. And then I guess my body relaxed like crazy, plus my workout, and then I dropped down really, really, really low. I mean, that is a wild HRV swing, is it not? With an average of 81 milliseconds throughout the day. Very interesting. Another day of normal. Let's see what it looks like. This was the day where I was hyper caffeinated, and so my mood and energy were through the roof. I remember walking throughout that day and just smiling. Everyone I talked to, I was so happy and so excited to see them and talk to them, because that's what being over caffeinated does to you, especially when you're not used to caffeine. It's like a superpower temporarily, but it's a double-edged sword for sure. So sleep, I don't know what happened here. The app must have messed up in some way, but it looks like I woke up around 5 to 6 a.m. So again, they're not putting the 50 on here, but it looks like 51 to low 50s again, maybe 60 BPM is my normal. And ooh, wow, my HRV was very, very low that day. That's interesting, is it not? So the day which I was not only recovering from my fast, but also hyper caffeinated, at one point I did reach close to 100 milliseconds. I think this was actually before I took the caffeine. I can't remember. No, I think this was right after I immediately took caffeine. So the caffeine helped me recover, and then it very quickly plummeted. It's an interesting trend, is it not? But yeah, overall 55 milliseconds. I think that's my lowest average to date. And it definitely plummeted and eventually managed to recover probably after I had my dinner. What about the following day when I slept over caffeinated? Well, my mood was relatively okay, but my energy was definitely kind of low. I remember not feeling too great that day. And if we look at the data, what do we see? So I woke up and like I said, I felt mostly okay, just a little bit tired, a little bit later in the day. Or one time I woke up around 7 a.m. this time, 7:30, 8 a.m. So 7:30. Yeah, my heart rate's maybe a little bit more elevated than normal. Still 50 to low 60s or so. But the overall trend looks a little bit higher to me. And then you look at our HRV average, 76 milliseconds. It's not that bad, and a little after 7. So my HRV was still close to 100 milliseconds, it looks like. Nah, I'm sorry. My HRV was 70 to 100 milliseconds by the time I woke up. So that is also still pretty good. I'm killing it with this HRV thing. Wow. Thanks, Google AI, for giving me a confidence boost. And then what happened the day after that? The day that I described as a dreadful day for me. Well, as you can see here, the sleep pattern we already discussed, my mood and energy were terrible. I was in a bad mood and I had no energy. I wanted to sleep all day. I felt absolutely terrible. And as you can see, I woke up a little after 6 a.m. Heart rate, okay, it's pretty steady. When you look at HRV, again, that's like 80 milliseconds with an average of 70 throughout the day. At some point, it tanked later in the day, probably when I was trying to desperately take naps. I think I probably took like 4 naps that day. And then at some point before I go to bed, it finally shoots up to like 150 again, which is crazy. I don't know how accurate the Apple Watch is in even detecting HRV and heart rate and stuff like that. That's another thing I should look up to see how accurate is even this data. All right, so the day after that, I also did not feel that great. Even though my sleep pattern was relatively normal, I mean, I didn't have as... If you remember my first couple of normal days, I had like 2 or 3 deep sleeps that were a little bit longer, but this time you can see that I was going into it a little bit more frequently. And so if there's one thing I'm learning from this is that more restfulness comes from longer periods of stretches in deep and core and REM, I think. And if you're having more frequent interruptions, I think that is showing that you're having a less restful sleep. That is one of the data trends that I'm noticing so far. If you look at heart rate, honestly, this isn't really telling me much. I'm getting pretty much the same numbers every time I wake up, which is probably a good thing, like low 50s resting heart rate BPM. I think that's pretty decent. And then when I woke up around 6 a.m., just a little before 6 a.m., yep, again, over 100 milliseconds. So 75 average. The next day, oh yeah, this was what, the Saturday or Sunday? I remember, so that, the over-caffeinated day, I'm pretty sure was a Wednesday. And then the couple days after that into that weekend, like that Saturday and Sunday, it was awful. I barely did anything that weekend. I basically just stayed home and played video games and watched TV shows and like opened a TV show and like didn't watch because I didn't know what I wanted to watch. I was so tired and stressed out that like I didn't want to do anything. That was my weekend. It was a terrible weekend. I want that weekend of my life back. Again, you can look at this data and see my HRV around the time I wake up, still absolutely killing it on the elite endurance athlete level. Heart rate, low 50s again, but mood and energy weren't there. So looking at these datas, you might think that, wow, I'm a very healthy guy and that I should have a lot of energy. But the reality is that I was still feeling absolutely terrible. So there's something going on between being over-caffeinated and having caffeine withdrawal symptoms and then having poor sleep as a result of both of those things that is not being tracked by this data properly. So I guess that's my conclusion here, is that you can look at all of this data all you want, but there are still some things that are just, we can't necessarily track that are going to correlate to mood and energy. That's one thing I'm learning. Do I have any more slides here? One more slide. That's when I finally get back to a normal. There were quote yesterday. So after March 31st, so I guess this was March 31st, which is the last day I was posting my data. And it's a weird sleep pattern, but yeah, same old story. Something happened here. Oh, I woke up very, very early that day and didn't sleep as much as normal, and so I had high HRV, and then did my exercise probably around here, and then again it was lower, and then recovered throughout the day. So yeah, let's look up what a normal sleep pattern should look like. Let's find out together. This is exciting. Okay, so per Google's AI, this is what a healthy sleep pattern looks like. Awake 6 minutes, so very infrequent interruptions. You go into deep a couple of times with a little bit of core sleep and a fair amount of REM sprinkled here and there. You mostly get your deep sleep early on, and then you mostly get your core sleep later and later throughout the day. Actually, is this a healthy example of a healthy sleep tracking, or is this what sleep tracking looks like? In any case, this pattern looks pretty similar to a lot of the patterns I was showing as my normal baseline earlier, so it seems like it's not just me that is the normal baseline. All right, y'all, thanks for watching. I hope you found something interesting in here. I hope that you found something to learn, and if you want to see more content like this, please let me know.